I'm Nicholas Borneos of Capitaling, and we just finished the introductory panel on safety first with Graham Henderson and the Together in Safety initiative with CEOs of major industry participants supporting that initiative. And now we're coming to another extremely interesting session on how safety standards are upheld throughout the globe. And we are gratified, we were just discussing that before coming live, to have with us an absolutely top level panel that includes the maritime authorities from the US, Australia, and Singapore, and also the Liberian Registry and the Marshall Islands Registry. And Theo Baltatzis, the Managing Director of Technomar Shipping, a major ship owner. It is wonderful to have a ship owner actually moderate this panel, because it is companies like Theo's company that go in and out of the ports and are exactly the subject of these regulations and their enforcement. So thank you for being with us. Theo, the floor is yours, and thanks again.
Thank you very much, Nicholas. Thank you very much. It is a great honor to moderate this panel with these very distinguished guests that we have with us. We are looking forward, their angle on various issues that we are going to discuss, and I'm quite sure that the floor is going to be very happy. Upholding safety standards across the globe is not something new. It is something very, very old, but it is always in fashion. It is going on and on for the last 30 years and so on. And everybody is, very focused on safety standards, and they're looking very closely what are the next moves and how we're going to move into the future. I have to say, from my humble experience of the last 36 years that I'm doing this job, that I have seen a tremendous evolution in these standards, and I believe I'll just put a very quick note on that, and then I will allow the panel to elaborate on. Those years, when I was a young superintendent engineer, everybody was looking on structural elements on ships that they were substandard and trying to maintain. But after the introduction of common rules, things have changed dramatically, and I have to agree that the last 15 years, it is rarely the case that structural problems do encounter around the globe. Mainly, we do have problems regarding STCW, we're having problems with MLC, and of course, the last evolution, as I've seen it, regarding these inspections, is that they're going more like a vetting inspector compared with what we've done the last 30 years. I have to say that the panel is tremendously distinguished, and I will introduce quickly our panelists, and I will pass the floor to them with sparking the discussion with the first question. We have with us it is a random order that I'm introducing the panelists, because I have very much respect for all of them. I have Captain Wayne Arguin from US Coast Guard. We have Mick Kinley from Australian Maritime Authority. We have Mr. Cheah from Singapore Port Authorities. We have Brian Poskaitis from Marshall Islands Registry. And of course, Michalis Pantazopoulos from Liberian Registry, Greece. And I will start with a very simple question, unless anybody from the panel would like to put any comment on my little introduction. Great. The very simple question that I'm looking forward and would like to elaborate a little bit on is, what do you foresee the future role of port safety control is going to be? And I would like to start, let's say, with Mr. Cheah. on this. It is again random, Mr. Cheah, so I will go in random order. What do you foresee is going to be the future role of the port side control?
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Theo, for giving me the floor. So from my perspective is that the role of port state control is still remain very crucial in this era. They are very important aspect of inspection to ensure that we continue to eliminate the substandard ship, and also to make sure that the ship sailing with safely sailing around our globe. So for me, I can envision that in future, the port state control role may be more to a collaborative approach, where they should work more with the owners, ship owners, managers, and also the seafarers, instead of just enforce it alone. If you compare maybe like what you say, Theo, maybe 30 years ago, when probably before or just port state control want to just started the campaign, we can see that a lot of probably more substandard ships around the world than current that we have. Definitely, there's an improvement the way how we see, and with the, especially with the wetting inspection program by oil majors as well. So these activities has actually improved our ships that trading around the world. And with our experience from the ground now, what we see that when our port state control go on board, we can see that the seafarers actually they like to talk more to our port state control officer, where they want to learn more from us, instead of they just waiting for us to give instruction. They want to learn more in terms of regulation, what's happening, what regulation is going to come up. So I think this is a good thing. With this approach, that's why we're thinking that it would be good that the port state control officer also will be more on a collaborative, sharing their experience, sharing the knowledge that they have at the particular time that when they're on board, so that the seafarer also can continue to upgrade their skill as well. And beside that, we should foresee the digitalization, where the new technologies come about, where the port state control need to learn more on the IT technology as well, instead of just equip themselves with the maritime knowledge. One of them is that we're using the technology to do the remote inspection on board as well. So the port state control need to go on more trainings on that particular aspect to move ahead with the new technology. So that is what my comment is. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheah. That was a very comprehensive reply. I'll pass the floor to Captain Wayne. Captain Wayne.
Thank you, Theo, and good morning, everyone from DC. I would completely agree with all the prior comments, and I would say that you know, in my 29 years, we've shifted. It's obvious if a fire main's falling apart, you don't have to really be super skilled at understanding how that system might work and how it might fail. And if you look at today, you can look at a system and not really be aware of how many different ways that it can fail based on the technology that's currently being used to operate and automate many of these systems. I think for the future of port state control, there must be collaboration. There must be a layered defense to safety. And so each of the entities, whether it's the actual ship owner, the crew, whether it's the flag state, the port state, the classification society, they all play a role in identifying, and they're just more eyes looking for potential problems so that we can prevent those bad things from happening. Much easier to prevent those on paper than it is to deal with a post-casualty response. I think also that there must be continued collaboration to identify and continue to incrementally raise the bar for safety. So as we identify those things that that may need some additional work and refinement, either through IMO or through other mechanisms, that we share those best practices and find ways to continually sort of ratchet the standard. But I will tell you, from my initial entry into the port state control world to today, we have absolutely had the desired effect of increasing safety to move cargo, a much safer opportunity for the seafarers that have been taking care of us throughout history.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Captain Wayne. Mick, you have any more to add? I'm quite sure you have.
Sorry, Theo, was that Mick or Mikhail?
Mick.
Ah,
That's you, Mick.
You.
I leave Michalis later because I try to have a different angle between Michalis and Brian
okay.
to your comments. So I'll just gather you in groups.
Yes,
Thank you,
okay.
Mick.
And I'd certainly agree with the previous comments, but my point of view, port state control is not going anywhere. I had a look at our last detention list for the last couple of months just before I came on, and I see we're still detaining ships for fire dampers, emergency generators, emergency fire pumps, the same things I was detaining ships for 20-something years ago. So there are still issues there that port state control has still clearly got a role. What I would like to see port state control do, though, is when we're talking about safety, is actually do more to stop seafarers getting killed. And it was very interesting to watch the last session with Graham Henderson and the team on Together in Safety, which I think is a fantastic industry initiative. But that again is the leaders of the industry, the good operators in the industry. What we've got to do is get to the ones who aren't so good in the industry and bring them along, because they're basically putting the rest of the industry to shame. One of the first emails I opened up on Monday was this lovely picture here, and it's you can't see it, but it's a pool of blood, a hard hat and a boot where a chief officer fell and was killed on a deck on a ship on our coast. That happens all the time. I can think of at least 3 fall from heights over the last few months where seafarers have died. And that's where I think we need to be focusing. That's what really matters. That's what we talk about, safety, saving lives. So there's a title in the Maritime Labour Convention. I think we all ignore it. It's about work health and safety. And I think that's the future where we need to be looking at. Thanks, Theo.
Thank you, Mick. That was a good point. So I'll ask Brian and Michalis to give us their angle on this very simple question. I'll start with you, Brian.
Thank you, Theo. That's very interesting. It's a different angle, but we are there to achieve the same goals. So that's an important statement to think about. Again, I think Captain Arguin said it pretty well too. As partners in this, port states and flag states are there to achieve the same goals. Mick, that brings back some real memories to me. Because when 1987, when I was training to be a port state control officer, inspecting a small ship coming into the port of Norfolk, Virginia, I actually ended up doing CPR on a crew member because he fell down a hold when he was mooring the ship up and slipped on a piece of wet cardboard. And we ended up luckily saving him and getting him out of there. But it brings that back to the real goal here is, like you said, to make sure the seafarers are safe, to make sure the ships are operating safely. And we could do that by, port state control is there to eliminate substandard ships and shipping practices. It can also assist in raising awareness of more operational issues that could lead to putting ships and seafarers at risk. So that's an important aspect. Thank you, Theo.
Thank you, Brian. Michalis?
Yeah, very interesting, and I agree with a very important role of port state control across the globe. Definitely, what the port state control is doing is checking the vessel compliance, and it's important. But the vessel compliance is not only be compliant with IMO regulation. A lot of times, there are operating issues, unsafe practices that the crew on board follows. Sometimes the problem is improper loading or not loading in the right conditions of humidity and temperature, and you may have major accidents or incidents or near miss, which is also an important aspect. So what I will say is, while the port state control role is extremely important and has been developed over the years with more sophisticated techniques and tools, in my opinion, is one part of the equation. The equation has many more components, from the ship manager, the crew that manages the ship owner asset, and to end up for the general public, because we forget the shipping industry. We, as an average citizen of a nation, I want protected environment. I want clean environment. I don't want to hear about accidents, about lost life, about this and that and the other. So, but on the same time, I want my furniture from China, my car from United States or from Japan, and I want the coffee from Brazil and all of that. So it's not a straightforward answer. We are all responsible and we have the common goal, but I think the next level is to find another way of cooperating and not acting as just individual entities, class, port state control, flag, charterers, right ship or commercial drivers on evaluating vessels. We need to find another way to take this process to a next level. Thank you.
That was a very broad approach, much appreciated, Michalis. Indeed, port state control started as a second line of defense to the flag and to the flag requirements, and has been developed over the years, one of the major stakeholders in this particular aspect. Additionally, of course, another major stakeholder which is missing from the panel is the classification society that I believe that they are the role of the firefighter.
They are part of the flag process. You know,
Correct.
most of the times the ROs, the class ROs, are working with the flag, and we monitor, we exchange information and all of that. So.
Correct, correct. And we believe that we see them like a firefighter, to be honest, Michalis. We see them as the guy who is going, to come on board the ship and let's say confirm the rectification of the deficiencies, and hoping that the flag and the port state control will agree with his recommendations and let the ship go. And to the actual crew members on board the ship, when the port state control comes on board, they consider him as a policeman, to be honest. That's the mentality, and that doesn't change dramatically, I have to say. They see that the policeman came on board and try, to put the finger on and, tell them what to do and detain the ship, and then they have to go back to the company and give excuses why they didn't have everything in order and so on. We, as a company, have a different approach. We try, of course, to pass this culture to our crew, but this is something very, very difficult, I have to admit, because right now on board the ship we have about 2,200 crew members. Not all of them are very long with us, because the expansion is very big over the last year or so. So the mentality is completely different. We want port state control, flag, to give us the different angle that they see the ship. And that is what we try to say to the crew members on board. We want you to take the recommendations, the problems that they've been raised by the flag or by a port state control inspection positively. See what they're looking, see what they're inspecting. They're doing it for your own good and for the company good, of course. And in this particular approach, we try, let's say, to explain that detentions are inevitable to a certain degree. But out of each and single detention, we have to learn something. If we pass across the border, the conclusions after a detention, then we'll be able to have a better system and a better record next year. It takes time. It takes time, and I believe that the majority of the shipping companies, they do look the comments that you put on a piece of paper positively and not negatively. Of course, it hurts sometimes that we are losing money out of it, but the aim is to maintain, let's say, extremely good safety standards on board our fleet, and the end result is going to be seen next year and the year after. This is something that, of course, it is a cultural change that it happens in our company over the last 10 years. And I believe we're seeing results in our system. Thanks, Michalis, for giving also the commercial aspect of these inspections, because it is something that sometimes has been forgotten. But for us, it is very, very important that out of a post-state control inspection and all the deficiencies that they put forward, immediately they've been transferred to right ship records, and that creates a burden on our back, explaining the right ship what happened, what was wrong, in order to improve our safety standards. We cannot avoid it. It happens, especially in bulk carriers, for a prolonged period of time. Nowadays, it's a new era for container ships also, and we have to live with it. And we're looking forward, maintaining a good record for this right ship, because this gives the commercial aspect of the whole operation. The safety, we appreciate your effort, and believe me that we are doing also a lot of hard work in order to uphold these safety standards across our fleet. I have to draw now a little bit of attention on what is happening around the globe. We've seen from our experience, and as I have said in our preliminary meeting, we're having something like 250 post-state control inspections every year. The result out of these inspections shows that there is not 100% consistency between MOUs inspecting ships, and they have a different point of view. And I was wondering if there is a kind of an approach that could give a consistency between the various MOUs around the world when we carry out the inspection. Is that possible, or this is a kind of a dream? I'll start with Mick Kinley.
Now, that's a very easy question, Theo. I mean, in an ideal world, we shouldn't have MOUs. We should all be doing port state control under the umbrella of the IMO. And I've said as much, I guess, of the two MOUs that we're members of. So I think we should be working towards getting to that global MOU. But unfortunately, what I certainly see is that once you have an MOU and you set up a structure and you have meetings and things happening, things just take on a life of their own, and they have no plan to end ever. So we have been working across the MOUs a lot more than we have in the past. So I think we are improving gradually, but I think what we also see, though, is that one MOU will think they will change and they will be doing something bigger and better, and they're the best system. Everyone else should follow them, but then they'll be going in a different direction. So it's the old expression, it's going to be a bit like herding cats. It's going to be an ongoing challenge. But I know even within Australia, I've got around 50 inspectors just trying to get consistency among my own people is the holy grail, and bringing them together and re-educating and those things is a constant effort. So yeah, in an ideal world, I think we would be doing it all under the one umbrella of the IMO under their procedures, but I can't see a path to that just yet.
Thank you, Mick. Captain Wayne? Captain Wayne, are you with us?
Sorry, I had mute issues. You know, so I would agree. I would say in an ideal world, we don't need port state control and we don't need classification societies, because crews and ships take care of those things themselves. So, you know, that is the sort of, you know, altruistic sort of view of the deck plate level folks that find those small safety issues have the ability and are empowered to get those things addressed. And they have a complete alignment all the way up to the top of management. And again, I don't think that you're ever going to get that, because there are different opinions about, you know, sort of all the different pressures that are on shipping these days. But personally, I think, you know, I've told all the folks that I work with, my job in prevention is to put response out of business. If I do that right, you don't need helicopters. You don't need to be able to do oil spill response. We prevent all those things from happening from the start, on paper or before they become major issues. I think on the consistency front, we have this conversation in the United States with our domestic fleet all the time. Everybody wants flexibility, but they want consistency, and those two things are at polar opposites. And so I think the challenges with trying to gain consistency with a very diverse fleet and a very diverse fleet of inspectors, I think that's going to just be an ongoing challenge and a goal that, at least from the Coast Guard's perspective, we're doing some things with our training, some continuing education, if you will, to provide the latest information. You know, when I came through the program, you got your qualification, and then that was it. You just kind of built your experience base, but there was never any recurring training. And we've changed that. We've looked to provide sort of, here's the latest information that's coming in, not only from IMO, but from our own domestic policy, to refresh that information, keep it current for those folks that are going out and doing the inspections. And I think the other way to at least move in a direction of consistency is going back to that collaboration, sharing those best practices, that when the United States Coast Guard finds a sort of recurring problem across a fleet, that we share that across the globe. You know, if we found that there's a particular problem with the fire damper, we make sure everybody knows that here's the issue that we found, and we should all approach that from the same perspective, or at least get a different opinion on it. So I think we're always going to be challenged with finding that sort of consistent approach. It's human nature. People have, you know, experiences and focus areas. But I think that also doesn't get us into tunnel vision. If everybody's exactly the same, and everybody's lined up looking at the same sort of problem from the same direction, you don't have that sort of 360-degree view of the problem. You may miss things. So I'm not so much of a stickler on everybody's got to be exactly consistent, because I don't want to miss things. I want different eyes and different perspectives looking at that problem set with that ultimate safety goal of making sure that those folks don't have problems on that ship, and that you can bring your cargo in efficiently, distribute, and then leave as efficiently as you can hope to be.
Fantastic. That was a great reply, Captain Wade. Thank you very much. Mr. Cheah?
Yeah, I think from my perspective is that I agree with Mick that of course ideally we should have one global, probably from IMO example, one global procedure and consistency apply across the globe. But I think it's not the way now, and probably for me it's quite lucky in terms of consistency, because Singapore is just one port, and it's much easier for me to manage the consistency among all the postal control officers. We can just talk easily and have a meeting and to apply the same approach, rather than individual or maybe a bigger port, you have an individual behavior, individual the way how you do your conduct your postal control inspection. So that's lucky on my part. And what we can see is that probably there is more, we can see already a lot of collaboration between MOU as well. Example, Tokyo MOU, Paris MOU, we are working closely. And also there are also initiative on the officer exchange as well, where we can calibrate each officer, we can send over to the other MOU, or both MOU or two MOU can come together to have some seminars and exchange ideas and best practices. Probably this type of situation, this type of arrangement can be done more moving forward, so that we can share best practices, we can share our common approach, and we can calibrate accordingly, so that like Theo, like you operating so many ships go around the world, it's much better for the ship owner to understand rather than to apply different approach from different country and different MOUs, which I think is quite tough to manage in such a way. Thank you.
Fantastic. Before I move to the different angle, as I say, and I would like you to excuse my ignorance for asking such a question. Is there any kind of organization like the classification societies have, like the Ajax, that the post-state control regimes, they do gather together and they exchange views? I don't know. Mick?
Yeah, well, periodically the IMO has had workshops with all the secretariats and the chairs of all the MOUs at IMO headquarters.
Okay. That would help a lot, I believe, collaboration.
But we also tend to have the
Mick, could you repeat, please?
Yeah, so the IMO workshops, but also there are the invitations, and I know Tokyo MOU and Paris MOU have mutual invitations to workshops, and that comes to the Tokyo MOU. So, and I think Paris MOU. So there is a lot of cross-fertilization that happens.
Very good. That would help a lot. So I'll go back to Michalis. What is your point of view on that?
I think I want to repeat a statement that Captain Wayne from US Coast Guard. If you managers manage well your ships and the crew are well trained, post-state control is not required. I think there is a lot of gist, a lot of value in such a statement coming from a post-state control official. Definitely, there are, of course, we are talking only about the top 3 MOUs, Tokyo, Paris, and US Coast Guard, but there are another 10, okay? The Indian, the Black Sea, the South Mediterranean, the Caribbean, etc., that they still look. But the point is one thing, and I think it's easier, to have all port-state control, or even the 3 major ones, to agree on a prescribed list of items that they check, because as everybody said, we check against IMO regulation. So STCW, SOLAS, MLC, etc. So this is rather easy to have one checklist worldwide. The difficulty is when you have to go into safety practices and operational practices by the crew on board the vessel. And in that aspect, I think it's very difficult to come up with a certain set of prescribed description or items, and also in their training of all different, including, as Mick and Wayne and Chang said, training of their own post-state control officer to approach in a uniform way the inspection process.
Thank you, Michalis. Brian?
Thank you, Theo. Let me start by just saying I also represent the Marshall Islands at the Tokyo MOU, and I'm actually sitting on 2 Paris MOU committees. So there is that exchange of information between the Paris and the Tokyo MOUs and other MOUs, as Mick had indicated earlier. Also, those IMO workshops are very important that the IMO sponsors and brings in all the MOUs, and of course, flag states are invited to those meetings also during that meeting, and that's an important aspect. The one thing I wanted to say, port state control over the years, of course, has been a very positive influence on global safety, on ship safety, on safety of the crew, on protection of the marine environment. And again, port state control has always said that's the last safety net. That's how it's always been. It's the last safety net because they catch the deficiency that maybe the owner and operator didn't see. Like you said, Theo, it's a different perspective. Maybe class didn't see, even the flag state wasn't watching properly. And then the port state goes in and says they got something here. I think for the future of port state control, one of the things that I think they can be more of an influence on is transitioning from just identifying deficiencies on ships to actually looking more at the interaction with the owners and operators, with flag states as partners to improve that safety. I think that's an important role. I think Mick hinted to it earlier about looking at the operational deficiencies that we see and sharing that information, those principles of partnership and transparency, because really with that, then the flag and the owner and operator can take further action after that deficiency is found. And that's the important thing, is to change the behavior, to influence the behavior of the crews, influence the behavior of operators and flag states, and that's where it can be a very productive role in the future. And that's also an understanding of, getting away of worrying about as much about the commercial implications, but understanding that having this interaction will actually improve your bottom line. And that's an important aspect to consider. One thing we learned over this global pandemic was conducting remote inspections is a good thing, but it's highly dependent on participation of the crew and operators. Okay, just like every ship out there has a safety management system, there's still ships being detained. And that safety management systems that are not implemented are worthless. Okay, just like that information, we learned doing these remote inspections, that interaction with the crew, the senior officers, more interaction with the owners and operators, and that transparency benefits the whole operation. I don't think it's any real substitute or complete substitute for putting boots on the deck or in the engine room of a ship, but it's an important aspect that we have to consider more in the future that will help drive and influence global safety. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you, Brian. I'll come now to you two guys. I'll leave a little bit my PSC inspectors on the side, and I'll focus on you. What would you consider as flag best practices to promote safety? Prevention against detention and the interrelationship between detained ships by port state control and your inspector. What do you consider is going to be the next step forward? Michalis.
Definitely prevention. Prevention, it's the name of the game, because from prevention, you can teach. In the process of prevention, you can teach and people can learn. Detention is an after effect, and analyzing a detention, of course, is a good practice to get lessons and experiences for avoiding reoccurrence. In Liberia, and I'm sure in other stakeholders in the industry, we are focusing on a lot on prevention. We have established not only technology tools, but compliance regional manager in the United States in several areas, ports from New Orleans, Jacksonville, and Seattle, etc. We are trying now with China, in Australia, to establish open communication with port state control, with class. So detention as a fact, it should be prevention before occurring, and only learn your lesson, try not to do it again as a reactive measure.
Thank you, Michalis. Brian, I'll come to you now again.
Thank you, Theo. Yes, well, I think an important aspect is what's driving performance. You have to look at the drivers of performance and try to understand how to influence a bit more, and then communicate that to owners and operators, to flag states, You know, one of the biggest things we've seen is that I think, like others have said, prevention is important, an important aspect. And, you know, of course, you know, a pound of prevention is worth 10 pounds of response in that regard. But raising awareness and transparency of operations, when you know something's happening or something's going wrong, to actually communicate that ahead of time. We've seen that is one of the best tools you can do, is use that transparency. And like I said earlier, have that interaction. We don't, you know, the answer is not to do more and more inspections. You know, doing an inspection is only going to get you so far. I mean, whether it's a port state inspection, whether it's a flag state inspection, whether it's a vetting inspection, the answer is that positive influence and understanding how to influence that behavior. And I think that's going to be one of the keys to the future. When we go out and do an inspection on a ship for a flag state, we don't go out there just to identify deficiencies, try to look for deficiencies. We know the deficiencies. They've been the same for the last 20-some, 30 years, you know, firefighting, life-saving. Of course, MLC now has jumped up there and is an important aspect, but they're pretty consistent. The real thing and the real key is actually working with the crews on board the ship during the inspection and passing some of that information on to them, making sure that they understand and are aware of it, and also sharing that with owners and operators that are faced with operating these ships day in and day out, and having that positive influence. So I think that interaction is the most important thing, and you have to look at what's driving that performance. Thanks, Theo.
Thank you, Brian. I will raise a point that it comes from the floor, actually. Is there any way that you could build predictive models so you can be alerted for potential risks by using data not only collected from your database, but also from insurers? What do you think about that, Captain Wayne?
Yeah, so there's a lot of talk about the use of data analytics in across all industries, and we're looking at those potential opportunities as well. I think I would say that's something that we would look at, but we haven't really dabbled in just yet. But I do think that, going back to I think it was Brian or maybe it was Michalis' point about near miss and that transparency, there's a lot of information that can be gained from a near miss incident, and reporting that information up so that bad thing doesn't actually occur. I mean, I think we're really good at going in and post-casualty investigating, trying to ferret out what that root cause was. But there's a lot of information that can be gained through that near miss investigation as well. But there's really a reluctance to point out that, hey, we almost hit something, or we almost had a problem, because of, I think personally, fear of sort of scrutiny and oversight. And I think we've got to just bust through that barrier and find ways to gain access to that information, because I think we could prevent some significant casualties if we knew that those things, something in that safety chain worked properly. But not being able to get access to that information is key for us to be able to sort of prevent those things from happening in the future. I really do think data analytics can be important, but I don't think it's going to be a supplement or a replacement for boots on deck. It's going to help fine tune and focus in on areas, and those areas are going to constantly change. But I don't think we can just rely on computers to point out where the next bad thing is going to happen.
I fully agree with you, Captain Wayne. They do help. I'm quite sure technology is here to assist. Of course, as you correctly said, boots on deck they make the difference. Having remote inspections is something that on your area of business is a little bit odd for the time being. But I would like also to hear the points and the opinion of Mr. Cheah.
Yeah, for me, is that of course is correct. We need to continue to ensure that the ship comply and correct, and the crew, that what Brian just now earlier said is that our post state control, there is one for analytic of insurance data. There is only one of the items that what the flag can use to ensure that the ship are in order. As a flag, actually, we use many data, monitoring data to gather the information to monitor our ships. Besides that, we do engage our owners. Our officers have been assigned to a specific company. And of course, some companies we may need to monitor more closely because we have over 4,000 over ships around, Singapore registered ship around. And we constantly put effort to monitor, to engage the company. And when the ship get detention, this is one of the indicators where we can come in and to engage so-called the company harder in case they don't do their job properly. And we impose additional survey, additional audit, and come up with a corrective action to ensure that they improve. And we continue to follow up. Even we attend their next DOC as well, document of compliance audit, to make sure that they do their job properly until they are off from our radar. So it's a lot of work as a flag state to make sure that each ship are complying with the regulation to trade around the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheah. Mick, any comments on that? Mick, do you have any comments on that? Probably something wrong with his microphone. I will raise a large...
Yes, I have the model and where I'm hoping to try it out next month based on incident data from the Registry.
So a very last question, if I have the time, Nicholas, it is a very quick one that I will wrap up the whole panel. What we need to work hand in hand. I mean, post-state control, flag, class, owners, managers, crew, insurers, everybody has to work hand in hand. This is something that needs transparency. This is not something that it needs to exchange views, to exchange data, to exchange experiences. And I'm looking forward in the near future when Nicholas is going to organize something that we could elaborate a little bit more on how all of us, all the stakeholders will be able to join forces and move forward. Nicholas, the floor is yours.
Well, all I will do is say a tremendous thanks to all of you. I know that for our Asian friends in particular, it's quite late. So thank you to all of you for being with us. It's been a great panel. And also for the captain in Washington, it's a bit early. So thank you everybody for putting in the time to make this panel such a great success. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicholas. Appreciate your support. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate your help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Theo.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Theo.